Unfortunately, a lot of times those people also flood their system with artificial dopamine. And so whether it's, in the form of video games, whether it's in the form of drugs, alcohol, tobacco, porn consumption, Instagram scrolling, all of this is flooding your mind with synthetic dopamine. And what it's doing is it's convincing yourself that you've already won without putting the effort in.
Welcome back to another episode of the Peak Performance Life podcast. Today, I am very excited to have Alexander Feinberg on the line with us. Alex's unparalleled achievements over the last 20 years include becoming a pro athlete, a hedge fund analyst, tech executive, and entrepreneur. This one-of-a-kind combination of experiences has equipped him with unique insights into the human condition and the motivations that drive us all. Today, Alex specializes in guiding high-performing executives and founders to their maximum potential with the same powerful mental models and cheat codes he used to build his own impressive success story. Alex, thank you so much for joining us here today.
I'm ready to rock and roll, Talor. Thanks
Yes,
so much for
man.
having me.
I love talking about this stuff. I mean, we've done a lot of episodes. There's only so many times you could tell people how to eat healthy and that kind of thing. So whenever we have stuff that has to do with mental models and, the kind of the mind games and systems and things like that, I'm always very excited because I think that's really the difference that makes the difference. So, maybe we could start with a little bit of your background and how you got into what you're doing today.
Yeah, well, absolutely. As you mentioned, my first job was a professional athlete. I was a professional baseball player. I wanted to succeed ultimately and become a Major League Baseball player. That's where I put all of my mental focus and energy as a teenager and early adult. By the time I got to playing college at Vanderbilt University, it became apparent that I was no longer the best athlete on the field. And I had to develop mental models that helped catapult me beyond the level that I was stuck at in order to actually get noticed by scouts and drafted and have the opportunity to play professionally. And so what that required was reconsidering a lot of the beliefs that I had as a teenager, believing that if I just worked harder than everybody else, I would be successful, believing that the person who quote unquote deserves it the most is going to win, believing that people are going to treat me fairly and rationally. And what I realized as a Vanderbilt student athlete was that there's so many cheat codes that have to do with the human condition and have to do with human cognition and how we perceive value and how we perceive patterns around us. And, to make a long story short, what that taught me was that if I wanted to be successful, whether it was in baseball or any domain, I had to understand the heuristic models that other people were using to evaluate me and then craft my story, craft my image, craft the way that people perceive me based on their own biases that they already brought into the situation. And so I realized when I got done playing that I had to stay in good shape. That kind of underpins a lot of the athletic discoveries and health discoveries that I initially was able to make my mark in the fitness community with. But it also helped underpin the strategies that I used to elevator pitch my way into Google. The way I was able to get a job in sales without having any sales experience or even owning a smartphone, simply realizing that if I wore a custom tailored suit and spoke with confidence and spoke articulately, that somebody was going to give this young man a shot in Silicon Valley. And so that happened. Continued to open doors using very similar mental models that allowed me to juggle many, many complex tasks at the same time by identifying the highest leverage points that I could across all of them, really reducing the work that I put into any individual item on my to-do list. And ultimately what that led to is being a powerful executive and eating delicious food every meal of every day, not living in the gym, not counting calories, not stressing about a lot of the things that other people have to, and realizing that there's so much opportunity in front of me if I simply am able to articulate some of these cheat codes that I use to skip from elite profession to elite profession, making progress every step of the way. And so now I'm fortunate to help other high performers integrate these mental models into their lives and experience similar productivity enhancements that I experienced over the last couple decades.
That's amazing, man. Yeah, I can't wait to get into this stuff. This is so powerful. So maybe So yeah, so you're now coaching people. You're helping a lot of people maybe who are already successful or have a good base, but really want to get to their next level.
Mhm.
What are some of the, I guess, what are some of the mistakes that you're currently seeing when people come to you, and how do you maybe help them turn it around?
One of the most common mistakes that you see high level performers make is believing that more is better
Mm,
because everybody was below average at some point in their career and everybody as a kid was lazy. And so a lot of the lessons that we keep with us in our 30s, 40s and 50s are actually lessons that we learned as teenagers that are no longer applicable and actually counterproductive at this stage in our lives. And so a lot of people will have no issue being disciplined in areas that matter to them, to the point of diminishing marginal returns. They're unwilling to reconsider the assumptions that they're bringing to the table. And they think that the thing that's getting in the way from them being good to getting to great is simply being more disciplined or simply doing more work. And frequently it's the opposite. It's figuring out how to rest better, it's figuring out how to put equal weight on recovery as they're putting on productivity. Meaning, if you're an executive, how you sleep and the quality of your sleep is just as important for your productivity as what you're actually doing when you're awake. And so, really getting people to reconsider the inputs, so they can exponentially increase their outputs. Because the way you get from beginner to intermediate is doing a lot of things and making a lot of linear progress. But the way you get from intermediate to advanced is trading some of that linear progress for exponential progress, which means you need to be willing to not be that good at certain things so you can be excellent at the things that truly matter.
yes, I love this. This resonates with me so much because I am Uh, one of the things people tell me a lot is that I'm very good at simplifying. But again, simplifying, and I've read all the 80/20 book principle books, and I kind of studied that methodology for a while. And so simplifying where I'm kind of focusing on the most important things. And you're 100% right. Also, when you're younger and you're trying to come up, you got to you have to say yes to a lot of things. As you get older, you have to say no to a lot of things. So things have to change. And I agree. We see this with exercising. We see with people, trying to get back to the gym. Someone who didn't work out for a long time and now they go back to the gym and they're like, I'm going to hire a trainer to do 2 a days. And it's like, well, then you burn out or get injured or something happens and then you're back to zero again, right? So I really like that concept of it's not about how much you do. And I think really high level achievers understand that it's not about just doing more. Like that only represents incremental progress, doing more, working harder. Yes, you can make some gains, but really to make a quantum leap, from quoting a book that I read a lot called U Squared, YOU to the second power, about making quantum leaps and making going from maybe 100 to 200 or something like that, right? It requires just doing things differently and a different level of thinking. So I really love what you're saying here.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so applicable, even in our lives where we understand these principles. There's so many things that we do that bog us down, and I was thinking about the way I was approaching creating content, for example. I had in my mind, I needed to put out a certain amount of content pieces per day. And then I got really overloaded with content creation. And then I took a step back and I realized that it's not the volume of the content that truly matters, it's the quality of the content that truly matters. And so a lot of times we get too mechanistic, particularly high performers get too mechanistic in their goal setting, too robotic. And the longer we're in a robotic, mechanistic goal setting path, the less time we have to pull back, be a little bit creative about how we're problem solving and how we're going about being productive. And ultimately, it's the creativity that allows us to leap from one level to the next. It's doing things a little bit differently than we had before. All mechanizing your process does is allow you to squeeze a little bit more water out of the rock that you're squeezing. But if you want to get to the next level, you need to figure out how to do things better. And one of the things that I try to do with myself and I coach my clients to do is anytime we're adding something to our schedule, we're adding something to our to-do list, we need to be subtracting too. This needs to be a constant game of Jenga where we're identifying what the highest leverage points of action we can take are, but we're also identifying, what are the relics of to lore 10 years ago that I'm still doing in my routine that I don't really need to do at nearly the extremes that I'm doing them. I can probably save 3 hours per week if I realize that, hey, I used to spend 90 minutes every day, or I used to spend 60 minutes every day doing this thing, but realistically now I can get away with doing it 30 minutes every other day. And being realistic about ourselves and understanding what's actually going to move the needle.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And for me, I don't know, maybe you could talk about this, or maybe you have a process around kind of thinking time, for example. So I'm very big on literally going out in the morning before I start my workday, ideally before I turn on my phone or anything, and thinking like, okay, different questions, right? One question might be, what do I hate doing in my business that someone else could be doing? And then,
Mhm.
like, by going through that exercise over the course of years, I was able to stop doing the things I didn't like doing. And other people actually enjoy doing some of these things. And they weren't high payoff activities for me. But I actually wouldn't have made that change if I didn't actually take the time to stop and think. And I think so
Mhm.
many people are just waking up, grabbing their phone, checking this, checking that. And like you kind of said, the robotic kind of same thing over and over. Do you have any kind of processes or things that you do, maybe in terms of like thinking or identifying or taking time for reflection?
Well, to start off, you can't be doing the same thing that your competitors are doing. And so one of the reasons why people have such little time to think and process is because they feel like they're under the gun to get everything done in a certain amount of time so they can spend time with their families, so they can compete with other businesses that they're trying to gain market share from. And unfortunately, if you're spending a bulk of your day amidst uh, something that you feel is a extreme competition, you have no time to think about why you're doing the things that you're doing. And so, unfortunately, a lot of the gains in life go to the already talented people because talent is really the thing that allows you to take your foot off the gas pedal in one area and reinvest the time that everybody else you're competing with has to invest in staying afloat, and reinvest that time elsewhere. So I kind of look at time investment similar to a portfolio investment. So the average person, maybe they're buying mostly stocks, mostly bonds. It's a pretty vanilla profile, but you're never going to, or portfolio, but you're never going to actually change your class by investing in the same things that your neighbors are investing in. You need to identify 100x, 1000x type investments. But if you don't have a little bit of capital, or you don't have a little bit of time that you're willing to invest in endeavors that will, in all likelihood, return zero 9 times out of 10, you're never going to break out of the lifestyle that you're living. And so, I try to structure my time investments like a high risk asset manager where, 10% of the time, even 15% of the time that I invest is in things that will, in all likelihood, result in nothing for me because I know 1 time out of 10, it's going to deliver a 30x result.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. What other? I'm curious to hear more about your mental models. What are maybe
Mhm.
some other mental models that you teach?
I really like maximizing the amount of productivity that we can do in our sleep. And so I first started doing this around fitness, where I realized that if I eat a certain way, which is a lot of protein dominant real food, I can train at a high level. If I train at a high level, what happens when I leave the gym is I actually have such a fast metabolism that I don't have to worry about counting calories so long as I'm eating protein dominant real food when I'm hungry until I'm full. And I realized that what I was doing in the gym was actually allowing me to burn like 3,300 calories a day on days I didn't even go to the gym. And so there's such strong equivalence between how you approach fitness and how you approach investing. On the investing side, that equivalent is passive income. So, how can you make money without working? I think John D. Rockefeller once said that most people are too busy working to get rich. The way you get rich is by investing in assets that grow in your sleep. And the second best thing that we can do if we are working is to invest in processes that work, even if they don't require active upkeep. And so, in order to do that, I have a kingpin mental model, which is how I approach a lot of things in my life. I want to be able to knock out the first item that leads to other items happening without additional effort. Okay, so to use a fitness example, I know that if I get up in the morning and I train, that my decisions the rest of the day will be much healthier, even if I'm not applying additional overt effort towards them. So if I don't have to apply overt effort to do something, to me, it's free. It doesn't require maintenance. And so the more things I can get done in my morning that allow for things to happen in the background or in sequence without additional effort, that's a great investment of my time. So it sounds like what you're doing with starting your morning out walking, you're probably opening your mind up to a bunch of creative channels that allow you to problem solve in ways that you might not be able to problem solve if you didn't start with effectively a cognitive warm up to begin. Very likely many people spend their entire days with some symptoms of what I call cognitive arthritis, where they can't think with great degrees of latitude because they're just not doing the mental exercises to get their mind warmed up. Where if you're just effectively daydreaming to start your day, I think what it seems like is you're actually accomplishing a lot more and operating a lot more efficiently later on. And so that could be your kingpin.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think there's a couple other things for me in that morning process is, getting in a state of gratitude and appreciation is a big thing for me as well. So I'm saying what I'm grateful for, what I appreciate. I'm visualizing, how I want, my wife and my daughters and myself to be happy, healthy into old age, going on family vacations and holidays. So kind of reconnecting with what's most important with me. And so it gets me into a great positive state. I feel like it's just a good energy, a good state that I'm in. And then a lot of the other times is like trying again, because we're so much in the business, in the phone, head in the phone, right? It's kind of like you kind of like think about someone holding a phone in front of their face. It's like tunnel vision. But if you go outside without your phone in the open air, it's like you're literally, actually they did a study on this, you're more open when you're outside in open air. And so thinking about higher level things that really kind of move the needle rather than just being in the day-to-day grind over and over, and yeah, maybe making small gains but not really changing a whole lot. So yeah, I definitely think that this is really important stuff.
Yeah.
I'm really curious though about your fitness routine that burns calories, and that was very effective for you as well. I don't know if you want to share any of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So most people get fitness wrong because they take the wrong signals for what will end up giving them the results that they want. So most people judge the efficacy of a training session by how hard it was, how much they sweat, and how sore they got. All of these are very poor proxies for what you're really going for, which is an increased resting metabolic rate. So I realized this after I realized this after looking at myself in the mirror at 32 years old without a shirt on, thinking, is somebody putting steroids in my water? Why am I in such better shape as a 32-year-old executive than I was as a 22-year-old professional athlete? And the reason was because I was doing less. And what doing less enabled me to do was focus on recovery so that when I did train, I was able to train at a higher intensity. And so I realized that, number one, it's a lot more fun when you're able to push yourself in the gym in ways that you've never pushed yourself before. And so that makes you look forward to, beating your personal records, continuing to hit new high watermarks. And what it also does is it forces your body to make adaptations. If you're not doing anything in the gym that forces your body to adapt, you're not really giving yourself the stimulus that's needed to have your brain send hormonal signals to your skeleton that says, add lean muscle and lose body fat. And so essentially what people do when they're going to these classes, which are very hard, but don't allow you to have enough rest periods, and if you do them every day, don't allow you to rest enough in between classes, is they're never lifting substantially heavier than they lifted at the start of their program. They're never running substantially faster when they are at the end of their program. And I was just speaking with somebody who ran track in college, and she said, the number one fat loss exercise that people can do is sprinting. And, I think that's true for people who can healthily sprint. By the time you get to be 30 years old, if you've been sedentary for 10 years, you can't even sprint in a safe manner. And so forcing your body to perform at a high level is the hack to getting yourself a fast metabolism. So you look at athletes, right? Athletes don't count calories and athletes don't try to be in a caloric deficit. If they count calories, it's to count enough so that they can eat enough to sustain their training. They're never, for the most part, trying to lose body fat. It's a byproduct of how they train. And they're also not training for the most part 10 hours a day. They're training intensely, right? My friend trained with some Olympic sprinters before his last year in the major leagues, and he was shocked that their workout consisted of 6 100-meter sprints. They did like a 30-minute warm up and then sprinted all out for 10 seconds, 6 times with 10 minutes rest in between. And so when you get your body to perform at a high level, what's most important is performing at a high level. It's not the volume. You need to do the minimum volume necessary to continue to perform at a high level, but it's all about performance. And so you need to fuel your body to perform at a high level. And for me, if I'm not eating at least 3,000 calories a day, I'm not performing at a high level in the gym. And if I'm not performing at a high level in the gym, I'm not burning calories when I'm resting from the gym. And so many people struggle trying to build wealth because they're fixated on, well, if I save $1,000 or $5,000 a month and I do this for 20 years, I'm going to get rich. It's like, no, you're not. You get rich by investing in assets that go up in value by 100 to 1,000x. And you get fit sustainably with low effort by investing your time into doing exercises at a high level so that you're burning fat in your sleep. So both ripped people and rich people share one thing in common, and they're making progress while they're sleeping, while average people are not. Average people can only improve linearly because that are the linear frameworks are the frameworks that they're working off of when they think about how to lose fat and how to make money.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm the same way as well. Like I find that I've never counted calories, and I feel like I kind of eat a lot. But I eat until I'm full and satiated. And because I'm eating whole foods and because I'm exercising regularly, I don't have to count calories. And like you said, in fact, if I do, I'm like, oh wow, I didn't get enough protein today. It's the opposite. It's to make sure I'm not under eating. So
Right.
yeah, this is really good stuff. What are some other, like, would you see like common people who are kind of stuck in a rut or maybe struggling? Let's say they're struggling to lose weight. Right. So there may be some people listening right now. They're like, I gained that extra 20 pounds now that I got in my 40s or 50s. And, I really want to lose it. But what advice or would you have for those people?
Eat foods that make you less hungry. And it sounds very simple and it's obvious, but if you think about foods that make you hungrier, processed carbs and sugar make you hungrier. And so you're hustling backwards when you eat those things. And this is one reason why calorie counting plans don't have a very high success rate in my view, is because if people, oh, I'm at 1,800 calories so far in the day, so I have 200 extra that I can spare, I'm going to go eat that cookie. It's like, well, guess what? You eat that cookie today, tomorrow you're craving 2 cookies. And then tomorrow it becomes a lot harder to adhere to your calorically restricted plan because you ate food that makes you hungrier. You want to eat food that makes you less hungry, which is predominantly protein dominant real food, animal proteins. And so if you can cut out the sugar from your diet as much as sustainably possible, like I eat sugar, I eat a lot of fruit, I eat fruit smoothies while I train. I eat dessert like 3 nights a week. So I'm not saying go to zero. I'm just saying be cognizant of the sugar that you're putting in your body and only eat the amount you crave, no more. Cut out alcohol to the extent you possibly can. No amount of training can reverse the negative effects that alcohol has on your system, because what alcohol does is it destroys your sleep and it disrupts your endocrine system. And so it's not just the 72 calories that are in an ounce of ethanol that will make you fat. It's literally what the ethanol does to your body. So if you can start by eating foods that make you hungry, eating foods that make you less hungry, avoid foods that make you more hungry, and avoid alcohol, there's a good chance you can lose 20 or 30 pounds without even stepping foot in the gym, right? But then when you do step foot in the gym, chances are you need to focus on areas that you're ignoring at present. And so a lot of people have trouble getting ripped because they go in the gym. If they lift weights, it's upper body. If they do cardio, it's like 20 minutes on the Stairmaster. It's like, okay, you're not doing the hardest things. And I'm not saying you need to do the hardest things over and over and over again, but you need to do them sometimes. And the hardest things are training your legs and doing high intensity interval sprints or high intensity cardio, right? So if you can do high intensity cardio a couple times a week and measure it so you know that you're improving your output, and lift your legs with as full range of motion as you possibly can, keeping in mind that your posterior chain is probably a little bit weak from ignoring it over the last 10 or 20 years of your life and sitting in chairs, you're going to have much better results from your gym training than doing a bro workout of 20 minutes on the Stairmaster, go do a couple sets of bench, a couple sets of lat pull downs, then you're done.
Yeah. 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 This is great advice. And again, just to reiterate what you said, really, I mean, you really crystallized like what people can do in such a simplified manner there, right? It's like sleep good, eat high protein, which will make you more satiated and you won't be as hungry compared to if you eat carbs. Literally, I was talking to a nutritionist. There was someone she was working with that was trying to gain weight. And I was surprised because I was like, oh, there's going to be eat more. And it wasn't even just eat more. It was, oh no, step up the carbs. Like, we want this person to gain weight. We need to step up the carbs. They need to be eating more carbs than they're currently eating. And I was like, oh, interesting. Like, I thought they were going to say more protein. And she's like, no, actually, if they eat more protein, they're going to be satiated. They're not going to eat as much and they won't gain as much weight. I thought, interesting.
Yeah.
So eating high protein, avoiding alcohol, which can mess up your sleep. You talked about how important sleep is for recovery and for performance. I agree completely. I think too many people are completely taking that for granted. Prioritizing your sleep is going to make you so much, your mind works better, your body works better. You'll be able to do the hard things. It's hard to do the hard things if you had 5 hours of sleep and drank 3 glasses of wine the night before, and then you want to go do the hard workout. You don't really have, you're not doing it most of the time. So yeah,
Right.
this is good stuff.
Yeah. It's simple, right? People
Yeah.
always want the most complex answer because complexity sells, simplicity works,
Right.
right?
Exactly. Exactly. What are you seeing in the highest performers that you've seen, whether it be in athletics, sports, or whether it be, in the business world? What are you seeing as like some of the things that high performers are doing that a lot of the other people are not, or how are they operating?
So it's so interesting that you mentioned this because I spoke about this a few days ago at an event in California, and my highest performing clients they don't have higher IQs than my average performers. My highest performing clients are amazing at identifying the simplest steps that they can possibly do to solve problems and doing those things. And so what separates elite performers from everybody else is not IQ, it's the ability to not be their own worst enemy, right? Most problems can be solved simply if you don't add an unnecessary layer of complexity through your own neuroticism. And so most people think that solving a problem needs to be more complex than it does. But I think about, the people who I work with who've made the most money. It's like their IQs are probably 125, 130, which is top few percent, but it's not top tenth of 1%, not top half of 1%. And what they do is anytime they're in a rut or anytime they're facing a challenge, they just think, what's the simplest way to solve it? And they identify 2 or 3 things and then they do them, and they don't ruminate on it, and they don't let it, consume them, and they don't let their mood, be totally taken down, and they're not negative around their families. It's literally like, what are the 2 or 3 things that can move the needle? Okay, do that. The people who aren't successful figure out ways to get in their own way. They figure out ways to convince themselves that those 2 or 3 things are not the 2 or 3 things that they should be doing or are insufficient to be done in isolation. And so they end up investing time and energy into anything but the 2 or 3 things that need to be done. So I think about performance very similarly to a athletic coach or a baseball coach looking at a swing. It's not the swings that have a ton of effort that hit the ball the farthest. It's the swings that are fluid, where the energy is focused in things that do what you want to do, and energy is not wasted in doing things that you don't want to do. So if you look at a swing that has a ton of tension on it, the hitter is actually just working against himself. Where the swings that actually result in home runs have the optimal amount of tension, not too little where you won't hit the ball far, but not enough where you're going to get in your own way. And most people who are somewhat successful have too much tension. They make it too hard for themselves. And it's my job as a coach to help them reduce their tension, reduce their anxiety, so that they can actually have more fluid motions, metaphorically speaking, so that their output can be a lot more effective while their input is reduced.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I see that a lot too, right? And a lot of it is, gosh, a lot of it though, I feel like is so I don't know, maybe it needs some coaching or therapy or something, like for some people, because it's like everything is, you meet some people and everything is so hard. It's, oh, I gotta do this, oh, I gotta do that. And I don't know what that is, why that is. Are there any, and then if you told them, hey, just, if you said to them what you just said, they might not even get it. Like they might not, well,
They wouldn't.
what am I, how do I even identify what I'm doing that's slowing me down, or that how do I change? So let's say someone's listening and they have this habit of like, I don't know, just things seem so difficult, or I don't change because I don't know what to do exactly. Is there any kind of thought process or something these people can do?
They have to be humble enough to realize that the system that they use to assess reality is wrong. Everybody's system to assess reality is wrong, but theirs is wrong to the point where it's getting in their own way. So I think I define intelligence a couple of different ways. The smartest people are able to identify intelligence in other people. So dumb people might look at me and they'll think, oh, well, that guy's like totally full of it. That doesn't make any sense. And they'll just like totally cast me off. Smart people look at me and they're like, yeah, I understand what that guy's saying. He navigates problem solving in a very similar way to me. I want to learn more about what that guy is thinking. So dumb people need credentials in order to be able to make sense of their surroundings. Smart people can identify proper cognition, and they realize that it's both rare and a unique identifier that they can find in other people, and then they'll gravitate to other smart people. So smart people have an advantage because their inputs are predominantly those of other smart people, where dumb people cannot even vet what dumb and smart is. And so a lot of the experts that they rely on are dumb, but they're not smart enough to realize that. Number two, smart people are able to identify the small number of things that are going to move the needle the most. And so, unfortunately, there's commonly a delayed result from effort and success. And it might take 30 days, it might take 90 days, it might take 2 years. And so, unsuccessful people are not okay with delayed gratification or delayed input versus output. And so, they can't track if a process that they're following is effective outside of anything but linear input and output. And so that's why these people tend to stay intermediate, is because their mind doesn't have the patience or they don't have the pattern recognition ability to track, okay, this result that's happening now is actually from inputs that I've been doing for the last 120 days. They're going to quit too early because if they don't see yield on their time or emotional investment in like 30 or 60 days, then they're never going to see it through to where it's actually giving them the hockey stick level ROI. And so these people, unfortunately, they're never going to be able to develop the pattern recognition that allows for them to delay gratification in such a way that rewards them for selecting a small number of items to do well in and ignore the many number of items that are bogging them down. That's why intermediate people, for the most part, stay intermediate. I can help the small number of intermediate people who are humble enough to realize that the mental models that they've used to get to intermediate are stopping them from getting to great. If they're humble enough to realize that and they're willing to learn from somebody who's constructed more effective, not perfect, but more effective mental models, we can make progress. Unfortunately, most people are intermediate. They look at where they were at at the beginner level. They look at other beginners and they say, thank God I'm not a beginner. So I'm not willing to give up the things that got me where I am, because look at how far above the beginners I am right now. Well, guess what? That's why they're going to be stuck in intermediate and they're never going to get to great.
Yeah. And for me, I think the key that you said there is learning new things, right? Being humble enough to realize, hey, if I haven't achieved what I want to achieve in whatever area of life, maybe the mental models I'm using, maybe my thought process is not the right way. And so I've never taken an IQ test, but I wouldn't say that I'm, I'm certainly not a genius, but I would say that I have been a learning machine. I want to learn new things. I actively seek out coaches and mentors and coaching programs and learn new, and that's what I've done for the last 20 something years. And so that's enabled me to develop new skills. And then, like you said, associate with other smart people. So joining all mastermind groups, joining coaching programs, being around other people who are into personal development, into growth, and then kind of, oh, you're doing this, I'm doing this, sharing what works, masterminding kind of a thing. But really, like, that's the key. And I don't know, like, can you teach hunger? Like, if someone has not been a learner or is not, like, one of the things that, like, I'm like, why don't you want to learn more? Is like kind of like what I'm saying to a lot of people, like, aren't you hungry? Don't you want to learn more? So I don't know, like, what do you think about that? Like, can you teach hunger, or desire?
A lot of it comes from dysregulated dopamine. So there's a couple things that
Mm,
I've realized is that really competitive people are very dopamine sensitive. And so for me, if I set a 5 pound PR in the gym, I'm ecstatic. A 2 second PR in the gym, I'm ecstatic. When I would win sporting events when I was 6 years old, 7 years old, I would be ecstatic. Where you look at the less competitive, less successful people, they just don't care as much. And so clearly my actions, I'm like a drug addict, but my drug is winning. And so clearly, I'm going to invest more into winning than the next guy is who doesn't feel the highs of winning as much as I do. So there's not much you can do to make that person feel better about winning if winning doesn't make him feel good already. Unfortunately, a lot of times those people also flood their system with artificial dopamine. And so whether it's in the form of video games, whether it's in the form of drugs, alcohol, tobacco, porn consumption, Instagram scrolling, all of this is flooding your mind with synthetic dopamine. And what it's doing is it's convincing yourself that you've already won without putting the effort in. And so ultimately, people will become driven when the dopaminergic reward justifies their effort. But if they're getting so much synthetic dopamine from their normal lifestyle and they're not that dopamine sensitive anyway, well, guess what? You turn that person into a loser. You turn that person into somebody who's never going to put in any amount of work that's necessary to succeed because it doesn't feel good enough. And there's too many lower cost, more easily accessible alternatives that they're going to reach for. If you want to help that person, what you need to do is get them on a dopamine detox first and foremost. And then you need to
mm,
get that person identifying with other people whom he would like to emulate or whom he would like to be able to model his life after. And then you have to hope that that person can effectively become so mesmerized with the concept of living like someone else that his actions will align with it. And then he'll start to feel, so he'll start to get addicted to dopamine at levels that he'd never really experienced before. And we'll start to go in that path. But just like any other drug cessation program, the likelihood of that happening isn't very high. Ultimately, the person kind of needs to hit rock bottom before any sort of meaningful change is likely to hold.
mm. Yeah, really, really good points there. And I think it really comes back to, for me, this is why health is kind of like just the foundation of all of this, because if you don't have the energy, right? Again, we've all seen the difference when we sleep 4 or 5 hours compared to when we sleep 8 hours, right?
Right.
Your motivation, your drive, your desire is just so much more. When you eat like crap versus when you eat healthy, you see the difference, right? In how you feel. So I think with health as a real foundation, getting that in order first can kind of help have more mental and physical energy. And then, yeah, learning new things, joining coaching programs, things of that nature, going through, learning from people who have new mental models or strategies like yourself. So yeah, I'm a big fan of I'm a big fan of coaching and learning from people who are obviously have frameworks and mental models that are working really well.
Yeah, and unfortunately or fortunately, it can cost a lot of money to improve your network with enough winners so that you're actually taking leaps and bounds. So a lot of these masterminds, it's like you go invest $10,000 on a weekend to just be around smart people and learn interesting ways of going about doing things. Well, guess what? I was in LA over the weekend. I probably spent $5,000 to travel, go there, do events, learn about my body. And realistically, if you can take away one life-changing like item from even a $25,000 investment, like that's huge, right? But most people don't think like that because most people are stuck in linear ways of processing. Oh, I paid $25,000 to learn this one thing. Like, you know, well, I could have just learned it on my own. Like you could have, but you wouldn't have done it. Like you could have spent 6 months trying to uncover all this information. You were not going to learn it on your own. And so you can speed up that process by investing enough money to be around smart people where they're feeding you good ideas. And that's why once your income can hit a certain threshold, particularly as a business owner, it just makes sense investing in building your network and surrounding yourself with the smartest people possible, because your personal growth rate can go from like 5% per year to 50% per year. And look at a portfolio, one that's growing 5% per year and one that's going 50% per year. The income gains from a large portfolio growing at 50% per year justify investing in a stable of experts that continue allowing you to grow at a high rate. So people who are already growing at a high rate generally have more income to invest in their continued growth. People who've never gotten off of the linear growth track generally lack the funds to get in the circles that allow them to grow at a much greater clip. And so life rewards winners by making it easier to win, and life punishes losers by making it easier to lose. And so, you never only win once, you never only lose once. Every win is followed by the greater likelihood of winning again, and every loss is followed by the greater likelihood of losing again.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I've invested, I don't really publicly talk about it all that much, but I've invested over $50,000 a year in my own education and masterminds and things like that for many, many years. In fact, probably close to six figures some years, between coaches and masterminds and all that kind of stuff. And it's been the highest ROI I could have ever gotten out of any investment, right? I mean, and by the way, I know, again, some people may be saying, oh, well, you're in a different position, it's maybe easier for you or whatever. I will tell you, when I was in debt and I was paying a coach $2,500 a month when I was in debt. And again, so, and this is not financial advice. And, I understand people are in different positions of their life. I didn't have kids at that time, whatever. But the point is, even when I was in debt, I saw the value in, hey, this is where I want to get to. I currently do not have the knowledge or frameworks or mental models to get there. So this person does, so I'm going to pay him. And again, it was one of the best investments I ever made. And, the rest is history kind of a thing. So, and I still to this day have always different coaches in different areas of my life, especially things that I want to improve on. So, Alex, this has been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed it. I think your message is spot on. And I would love for people to, if someone is the right fit and someone's a high performer, I'd love for them to know about where they can kind of, I know you got some programs, maybe you can talk about a little bit, or where can they follow you?
Yeah, I mean, you can go to my website, feinbergsystems.com, Feinberg systems.com. Click in the upper right-hand corner. You can explore performance coaching, makes sense for you. We can hop on a call, chat about what you're looking to do, and I can probably let you know within 15 to 30 minutes if I can help, or if somebody's a better fit than I am. You can also follow me online, Alex Feinberg1, across all the major platforms, X, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, where I will post clips of hopefully this podcast, if you can send them to me, Talor.
Absolutely.
And other tidbits of valuable information, mental models, learnings that I get from clients. Because one of the things that you get from coaching high quality individuals is you can sanity test a lot of the ideas that you have, and then you can iterate at a faster rate too. And so a lot of the learnings that I get, I'm fortunate to get because I work with really smart people who force me to bring really smart ideas to the table, and then I can resurface them to other people who follow me online once I've found points that really resonate.
Amazing. Alex, this has been great. I really enjoyed this conversation. I love talking about this kind of stuff. I hope we can do it again sometime.
Absolutely, Talor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, can you please leave us a rating or review and subscribe? I've realized that while we have actually increased our downloads a lot, we're actually getting a lot of downloads, which I'm really happy about. We actually have very few ratings. And I realized that I've never asked people really to rate much. So I'm asking you now if you could please rate and review and subscribe. And if you enjoyed the episode, please forward it along to anyone that you think will get value out of this. Also, if you haven't checked out our line of products at buypeakperformance.com, you get 20% off your first order. That's www.buypeakperformance.com. We have some incredible products, including our organic high-altitude coffee. If you don't know this, coffee is one of the most heavily sprayed with pesticides out of any crop. So it's really important that you drink organic coffee. We've gone above and beyond to source what we believe is the highest quality and healthiest organic coffee in the world. We're also famous for our organic green superfood powder. You can get 20% off of that as well at buypeakperformance.com. We also have an organic, vegan, and paleo plant protein. See, most of the vegan proteins out there are using brown rice protein, which is really not a good source of protein, and it's also a grain. And if you're paleo, you know that grains tend to cause inflammation in some cases for some people. And so we wanted to make one that was paleo friendly and vegan and organic. We made an amazing amino acid profile, so it's really one of the best plant proteins for muscle building. So you can check out Peak Performance Organic Plant Protein. You can find that on our website. Of course, all our products are on Amazon as well. So thanks again. And again, please, if you enjoyed the episode, please forward it along to someone who you feel can get value out of it. And please leave us a rating, review, and subscribe. Thank you.